Thank you, Aaron. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. You got quite the resume there, and you're in Burgundy, which
Uh,
is
well, I feel like your resume holds its own there, Aaron. But yeah, I'm excited actually because one of the wines we're tasting tonight is in fact from Burgundy, and I'm sitting here in Beaune, in the Côte de Beaune. And this first wine is from Meursault, which is a village here, which grows known mostly for Chardonnay. It's only, I mean, it's a short drive from where I'm sitting right now. I actually was there yesterday and today walking the vineyards, talking with the vintners about harvest and kind of what's going on. So I think it's a great jumping off point. But first I have to ask, do you have your wines open? Are they in front of you? Are they in your glass? Because we can't
here.
possibly have
I got them all ready. They're off camera here, and
Okay.
I got three different glasses, so I'm ready to go.
Perfect. I have three different glasses as well. Mine are all poured. Normally, I'm very honored to do these tastings with Haute Living, and I have my sort of home studio, which is a little bit more set up for these types of webinars. But I think we're going to make it work because it's actually 11 p.m. where I am, so I'm ready to have a glass of wine. So
It's only 4 here, so it's happy hour in Wisconsin, for sure.
all right. Well, it's happy hour for both of us then. So, well, first of all, cheers. So nice to meet you.
Yeah, which one are we doing? I got to choose.
It's an honor. So I'm starting with the Meursault. So the one white wine that we have. So this is the Ballot Mio 2016 Meursault. And while you're pouring, though, I have to ask, because we've actually never met before just now, is what was your first experience with wine? What's your first memory of it?
First memory is probably just watching the old people like Thanksgiving drinking wine and thinking, and then there wasn't a lot of alcohol in my house, but it was always kind of like on a special occasion there'd be some wine drank. But my first specific, I think, introduction to it was going to Italy and
Okay.
and going to Tuscany and drinking some Brunello. So I was a little bit spoiled because that's where I started, and I've been in love with Italian wines ever since. And more recently got into more of the French stuff. Napa was close to my hometown, so I knew about it and took a trip actually in college, but it was more of a drinking trip and less of a tasting trip, shall we say.
It's usually everyone's first trip to Napa is usually a drinking trip and not a tasting trip. So that's not unexpected. But okay, so you started off on, let's say, high ground there with Italy, and then so Brunello is a red wine. Is that kind of where your heart lives? Are you a red wine drinker? Do you like lots of different types of wines, or?
Mostly red wine, I would say, and cabs in particular. Until a couple of years ago, I went to New Zealand, to Waiheke, I believe I'm saying that correctly, and they have some incredible white wines there. And since then, I've been a little bit obsessed with New Zealand whites. So, and actually opened my palate to other whites as well. So I do enjoy more whites now than I did before, and thanks to the New Zealand whites.
Okay, so you like New Zealand whites. So New Zealand also grows some beautiful Chardonnay, but this is from Burgundy, again, where I'm kind of sitting right now. So I'd love to let's taste this together and see what you think. So the way I like to start is just giving it a good swirl. I'm often asked, like, why do people do this? It's not to look snotty, right? Or, affected. It's because it actually really opens up the wine in the glass. It gives you greater surface area where it's coating the inside. So when you put your nose in the glass, you're going to be able to enjoy it more fully. And it gets that just sort of little like electric oxygen shock into the glass where it's going to just start talking to us more. So I'm going to swirl it around, give it a good sniff. And honestly, sometimes smelling wine for me is my favorite part. I think that there's so many intriguing things that happen before you even taste the wine. I don't know. What are you experiencing anything already with this wine?
I marvel at sommeliers and their just ability to detect the tasting notes. And then when you hear them talk it out, it definitely, you start in your own mind tasting those as well with them. But I haven't drank This is a burgundy white. I haven't drank a lot of these, but I do enjoy the definitely the smell is fantastic.
It is. I like that you brought that up, because I think sometimes there is something about wine that's like power of suggestion, where that happens to me too, where someone will say, "Oh, I get quince," or "I get this and that." I'm like, "Oh, I do too now." But I think when I was really learning about wine, when I was really studying wine, I mean, I'm still a student of wine. I always will be, because it's my passion. But I found the best thing was just to like stick my nose in a bunch of like fruits and vegetables at the farmer's market, or different flowers, or just start to like try to find things that I could pick up in other places and then relate it back to the glass. So it's a constantly learning experience. But for me, so we're in Burgundy. So this is Chardonnay. So white Burgundy, there are a couple of exceptions, but we won't go down that rabbit hole. For all intents and purposes, white Burgundy is Chardonnay. So this is 100% Chardonnay. So Marceau, for me, I always get like a good amount of citrus, like sort of lime, lemon, like lemon zest, Meyer lemon, apple. It's very perfumey to me. Like it has this sort of like I don't know, like my grandmother had these like sort of like lace things, and it had this like mix of perfume that she had worn, you know, to various things, and it sort of like reminds me of that. Like it's just a perfumey, like beautiful wine, like apple. And then bear with me just for a minute, but like with Merceau, I often get sort of an oatmeal. I know that's going to sound weird, probably, but for me, I always get this, like this like sort of oat note to it as well. And then of course there's definitely new oak on this. So I get like sort of butter, you know, butter toast, sort of that sweet spice from the oak.
Yeah,
but
that's
anyway.
That's the I can get when because these are aged in oak barrels, I believe. Is that right?
Absolutely, yes.
So I can definitely get behind that. The other stuff I leave to the experts like yourself. Every now and then, you know, I mean, I feel like I can taste some of the old worlds like that. You know, they talk about like that dirt almost, and that just earthiness. Sure. This I definitely get some oak on the nose, but
definitely in the form of that kind of sweet spice, right? Which is just comes from the toast of from the oak barrels. But let's taste it. So this is if you'll play along with me, this is my favorite things to do with wine. Is so when we taste it, like really swish it around your mouth, like let it touch every corner of your palate, and then sit just for a moment after you've enjoyed the wine, and then let's talk about not just like what we're tasting, but like what we're feeling on the palate.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll play along. Okay. Okay. So for me, this is what I love about wine. It's such a full sensory experience. So I don't know about you, Aaron, but my mouth is like aggressively watering. I've got like major saliva situation happening, which is what you want in a wine, right? It's wine should have acidity. And I'm sitting here, you know, in Burgundy, as I mentioned, like it's a cooler climate for growing Chardonnay. The grapes have a lot of acidity in them. Chardonnay is a grape, it has a natural high acidity to it. And this is what makes like this wine, it just makes me want to reach for like a piece of cheese or some type of food, you know, that experience where your mouth is watering. It's almost like the same thing as when you squeeze a lemon on food, you know, and it makes your palate kind of go, oh, like I want to come back for more. My palate is refreshed and I'm ready for another bite. It almost cleanses it. But that's the first thing I noticed. Did you feel that as well? That kind of like really like mouth watering experience?
All of my cheeks and the back of my throat, it was just like feeling like there was just dripping down there, you know, and it was the saliva of just the fullness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly it. Yeah. Some people, if they have trouble feeling that, sometimes I say just like after you swish, it really does require you to swish the wine around. I know you like red wine, so I want to move on to those. But in summary, I think that this white is for me a perfect example of like that really sort of what I look for in a white wine, which is that sensation of like freshness, like, you know, this crisp acidity to it. But for me, this wine has like body and texture, almost the way that some red wines do, where it like actually like sort of coats your palate. It feels sort of very broad, and just really interesting. But let's get to some reds, because
for the person who doesn't know wine that well, can you give me a 30 and just explain, because I do like this wine much better than say a California Chardonnay. Can you just explain the difference quickly in like a burgundy white Chardonnay and like a Napa Chardonnay, maybe?
Absolutely. So with certain varieties, and when I say variety, I mean what is the grape. So in this case, the variety is Chardonnay.
Right.
Chardonnay is a grape variety that grows many places internationally. So it can grow in, you mentioned, California, it's here in Burgundy, it's in New Zealand, it's in Australia, Chile, Australia. So it's also a variety that can take on a lot of personality about where it's grown and how it's made. So winemakers will often refer to it as almost like the winemaker's blank palette, because it, as a variety, it's not that it doesn't have character, but it's really able to very sort of elegantly take on other things, the place, the winemaker's intention, what happened to it in the winery, like oak. And so really, if you like Chardonnay, there are many wonderful places to enjoy it in the world. What's different, you mentioned California. So I think about like Napa or Sonoma, which is of course grows beautiful Chardonnay, and Burgundy. The difference is it's the same grape variety. It's going to be 100% Chardonnay in both places. But what's sort of magical about wine is this thing that we call terroir, right? Which is a word that's meant to encompass everything about the place. So it's the soil, it's the drainage, it's the sunlight, it's the aspect to the sun. And some people use terroir also to include the people. So what is the tradition in the region? So ultimately, what you're going to taste the difference is that, there may be some differences in the winemaking, like, oh, did they use a percentage more of new oak or less new oak? But it's the place. And here in Burgundy, it's cooler. You're going to have a lot more acidity to it. Well, the way I refer to Chardonnay here versus in Napa is there's a restraint to it. Whereas in Napa, it can be another beautiful expression. It's not better or worse. It's just different, where we get more sunlight hours in Napa Valley. We get more warmth. So it'll be a little bit more forward. So when I taste them too, let's say if I was tasting those like blind tasting, so I don't know what they are, the way that I would get to a place in the glass is that, like, how ripe is it? How sort of fruit forward is it? If it's sort of more opulent, rich, forward, I'm going to go someplace like Napa. If it's a little bit more restrained, like the one we're tasting, a little bit higher in acidity, then I might go someplace like Burgundy. That's a little bit more old world. So that's a very sort of broad strokes answer, but I hope that was what answered your question in some way.
Exactly. Thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure. All right. So
I want to jump into now.
Yes, let's jump into some red wine. So I know you like Cab. We don't have any Cab on the table here today, but we do have two wines that I'm really excited about. So the first one is the Pinot Noir. So we're in California, which we were just talking about. So we're on the Sonoma Coast. So this is Hirsch Vineyard. So Hirsch is really fascinating. This is a family-owned winery. So they've been very sort of, I don't want to say trendsetters. They're very historic. They're very well respected in the region. It's a father and daughter operation. The father really established a lot of vineyards in the region and sold fruit, because a lot of people, you can make wine, but you can also just grow grapes and sell them to wineries. And so for a long time, Hirsch was the source for many of these very sort of sought after Pinot Noir producers on the Sonoma Coast, but they didn't really make their own wine. And then eventually they started to make it. And then his daughter, Jasmine, who's now the president of the company, she's not only overseeing the whole vineyard production, but she's also overseeing the winemaking. And what I really love about them, and we haven't even tasted it yet, I'm talking about what I love about them, but one of the things I really love about them is they're very, very committed to sustainability, to being, environmentally conscious. So everything they do in the vineyard is organic or biodynamic. It's all about kind of long-term investment in the vineyards, in the earth, sort of in what's going to happen in future generations for other people who might farm these vineyards. So
they're also they're a smaller producer, right? It says 790 cases.
You're exactly right. So very small. So not a winery or not a wine that you will see everywhere. You're not going to find this on the grocery store shelves per se. I carry this at Wine Access, and you might find this on restaurant lists as well, or a couple of smaller retailers, but definitely kind of a more family owned small producer, and really just invested more in quality than quantity.
Love it.
So,
can you tell me the difference between like a Russian River Pinot and a Sonoma Coast Pinot? I mean, it seems to be pretty similar region as far as weather and topography.
For sure. So Sonoma is a very large county. So there are actually, even though it's all in Sonoma, there are many different regions or appellations, AVAs, American viticultural areas within it. And honestly, even for a trained professional like myself, it's not always easy, to discern. But what I will say, what I can pick out in the glass that would be different between Russian River, as you mentioned, or Sonoma Coast, is literally, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the Merceau, is location, right? So Sonoma Coast is literally on the ocean. You're seeing the ocean. I don't know if you visited, but it's not coastline like where you want to get in your bathing suit and jump in the water. Like, it is really cold. It's cold. There's fog. You're going to get a lot more of that kind of brisk acidity, sort of almost that restraint like we were talking about with the Merceau from Burgundy, because it's colder. Whereas Russian River, it's not that far away. It's not hugely different, but it's a little bit warmer. I get a little bit more sort of plushness, ripeness. It doesn't have that sort of very extreme growing situation like you have on the Sonoma Coast that gives it that distinct personality. But I need to taste this wine. I've been talking so much, I haven't even tasted it. So exactly as I remember, I love this wine. I don't know if you did the whole exercise, but like for Pinot Noir, it's a lighter in color. It's a thinner skimmed grape variety. So like I can see right through this. Like if I held a piece of paper under this, I could read through it.
Yeah.
Versus like a Cabernet Sauvignon, which you mentioned earlier that you like, where you probably couldn't read a word through it because literally the skins of the grape are thicker. It makes for a deeper, intense colored wine. This is lighter in color, but very perfumed on the nose. I think when I put my nose in this, I get like a ton of sort of raspberry, cherry, sort of like crushed rose petal. Again, a lot of perfume, but there's like a little bit of a savory note too as well, almost like a kind of mushroomy, I think you said forest floor earlier. You mentioned something about that, right? There's a little bit of sort of earthiness to this wine as well.
Yeah, there's a little puckering in the lips, I feel, a little bit of that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So it still has that nice acidity, right? Which you want even on a red wine, that sort of mouth-wateringness. And the thing that we can talk about now too, because we're on a red wine, is tannin, right? So tannin is that, that comes from the skins of the red grape varieties, because red wines are fermented on the skins versus white wines, which are pressed off of the skins of the grapes. So I get a little bit, this isn't a high tannin wine, but definitely do get that little bit of like, my mouth feels a little dry, like my tongue kind of wants to stick to the top of my mouth a little bit, like it feels a little tacky. That's from the tannin. And again, Pinot Noir is it's lower on the scale of tannin, but at least it gives us something to talk about now. Yeah. So anyway, I'm curious your thoughts on the wine though.
I like it. I fell in love with one Pinot like 8 years ago and ordered it at my favorite restaurant in town.
Ooh, what is it?
It was the King's Estate Pinot from Oregon. And I don't know what it was during that time, but it was the only Pinot that I liked. And it seemed like fruity enough and fruit forward enough to savor without the I don't know. I like the big boldness of like California cabs, and then like
Mm-hmm.
the old dryness of the old world cabs, and that's kind of what I've stuck to. But I do enjoy like the fruit in the Pinot that's not overpowering, and I
Yeah.
do like this one. I don't think it's overpowering, and
Yeah.
not too thin almost. Like sometimes the lighter reds almost feel a little thin, and that isn't even
Yeah.
that's probably a word, but I do enjoy this one.
No, actually, I think um, you're very good at describing wines, and often I notice some people who say like they don't know that much about wine, or they don't know if it's the right words. They're using all of the right words. So I kind of find that with you too. You know, it's like it's just really talking about what you're feeling, and what I love about wine is it's really not meant to sort of have a barrier, right? It shouldn't have this high barrier to entry. It's meant to be like, hey, I'm going to taste something different than you, and you're going to taste something different than me. We can probably meet somewhere in the middle, but we don't have to agree on everything. And as long as we can have a conversation about it, that's what it's all about.
I
Meant to
agree.
bring people to the table. So okay, well, I do see one question. I'll pose that to you in just in a minute. That's in the Q&A, but I want to be sure we get to the final one, because I know we have a surprise guest who's going to be coming on eventually. So so I'm back in France with this one, just a little bit south of here. So we're not in Burgundy anymore, but we're in the Northern Rhone. So this is Syrah from Côte Rôtie. Is this a wine that you've had before, that you enjoy often, or is this a brand
Uh,
new experience
I,
for you?
I've had some Syrah before, but I have not had this one so far.
Okay, so
I'm,
I
the first thing that stands out to me is I'm always interested in the vintage. So,
yes,
so with cabs, it seems like it's maybe a few years from picking that they kind of really
mm-hmm,
ripen. For whites, it's obviously the next year. This one is
yep,
years old. Does that have a difference? I mean, the color is outstanding. It's so dark and purple.
yes.
Uh,
So it's a great point. So this is a 2018. So actually, for red wine, it's still on the young side. Because to your point, red wines, or at least really quality red wines, should be able to age and should actually get better over time. So this is on the more youthful side. 2018 was a very good vintage in the Northern Rhone, but I think it's gonna drink well now, but I think we could also have aged it longer. But I
mhm.
love always this question about like when to drink wine, because the truth is it's like, when do you like it? Because there's definitely, I can tell you my opinion, the winemaker can tell you his or her opinion on like when they think it's going to drink best, but ultimately I know people who like wines when they're so old that there's almost no fruit left and it's all savory, and it's like not to my taste, but it's what you like. Again, it's not meant to be like, oh, you're doing this at the wrong time. It's when do you like it. But I think this is going to be a perfect balance of drink now but could also age. And I say that only because I have to admit I love this wine, so I've had it many times. But I think right off the bat, you commented on the color, right, which is totally different than that Pinot Noir, which was very light in color. This is like very hard to see through. Maybe not totally opaque, but pretty deeply pigmented. And then, so what I get on this is a lot of sort of blackberry fruit to it, but Northern Rhone Syrah really, for me, has this sort of like exotic spice to it. It has like lavender, fennel, rosemary, almost this kind of like mixed herb. They use this word in the Rhone garrigue, which is this sort of mixed herb and floral notes to it all at the same time. And Syrah to me always has a smoky note to it. I get almost this like cedar, like ember note on it. Almost like, also you can get kind of like a seared meat, like a bacon note on Syrah sometimes, which I definitely pick up on this a little bit in the nose. Anyway, Syrah for me, I could go off for a long time on the nose, because I think there's a lot of things to talk about, but we should taste it. Okay. So your thoughts, Aaron?
It's kind of more towards the front of the mouth, for me. I like that a lot. It's a good balance. It's not too much kind of blasting you with fruit or like boldness, but
Mhm.
it's not light at all. It's not a it's an easy finish where some of the I feel like uh European reds have kind of a drier finish or a sticks to your tongue almost, your tongue sticking to the roof of your mouth sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not I'm not getting any of that with this.
Again, I feel like you're like all your descriptors are spot on. So I agree with you. I feel like the tannins are sort of just medium. Sometimes I know you like Sangiovese, you like Brunello. It can be more tannic, kind of that more sort of grip and fullness and like muscular feeling. For me, this is a little bit more feels like a silk scarf a little bit, the structure, it's very lithe. But I feel like there's a lot going on. This actually makes me really kind of want to pair it with food. I feel like this is, there are wines that I think you could drink by itself. There are wines that need food. I don't think this needs food, but it kind of makes me want to pair it with something, because it has so much
Yeah.
going on. I kind of want to see how it interacts.
There's
But
definitely a little too. There's a little spice that kind of hits you at the end of it.
yeah, for
Makes
sure.
makes you want to get a little steak or something, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything with like a sear on it or anything smoky, like off the grill, I think too, with this kind of like smokiness in the wine. So we have a Q&A from a viewer, if you don't mind. So, okay, here's the question for you, Aaron. Aaron, what kind of wine would Devonte Adams be or Aaron Jones?
Vanessa, you know who those people are.
No.
Those are two of my team. That's my two of my
Okay.
two of our best players.
It's not
Uh,
my question. This is from a
that,
viewer.
that's a great question. I think I think Vanessa can help me with this. Give me Aaron Jones is a newer wine.
Okay. Yeah.
He's an upcoming, uh, kind of new on the scene. Not a lot
Ooh.
of world to him. He's a new age, like versatile type of wine.
Beaujolais. Easy. Beaujolais. Yep.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay.
And
Next.
then Devante is that classic.
Mm.
Uh, he is a ballroom dancer with his footwork, and he is one of those classic standalone unicorn type of wines that is, you might find at your restaurant, but it's, on the reserve, and it's just kind of there for show because no one ever really buys it. And it's one of those things, being
Oh.
a seller, you kind of hold on to it and save it for the perfect moment.
Okay. So more like power or more elegance.
Elegance, but there's a lot of
Okay.
power, but he's very, very classy and elegant.
Okay. So I was gonna go two different ways, depending. So I was gonna say maybe a left bank Bordeaux, like maybe a Pauillac, which is very classic, right? Very, very structured, very old world, but very, elegant. But also you could go Pinot Noir. You could do like Burgundy. You could do like Grand Cru Burgundy, like DRC. But I think I'm gonna go Bordeaux with you because there's, I feel like maybe an older Bordeaux because you can have the power but then the tannins are like kind of softened, so you've got the elegance as well. So I'm gonna go Pauillac for that one. Yeah.
You could just skip all that, go right to sparkling and champagne, because
Okay.
just every time one of these guys touches the ball, they could celebrate. So it could be a good champagne.
Well, you're talking to like I love champagne. I drink it very often. I'm often like mocked for how much I love it, and I don't care. So, Aaron, this has been such a pleasure.